Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is James, and today we're looking at another very overrated film to discuss why it's overrated and what we, as filmmakers, should be taking away from this. If you're new around here, I did another video where we looked at Disney's Marvel's Avengers to break down why that movie is so overrated. In that video, I promised that we would cover a Star Wars film, and I am delivering that promise today. How is The Force Awakens overrated? What is wrong with it? What did they do that was not right? And what did they do that was right? We'll dive into it, but first, please make sure to subscribe for more content like this, as well as to receive other videos to help you learn more about filmmaking and how to have fun with it. Keep in mind that I am only basing any information we have on the world building and characters from the movies themselves. If there's other information from whatever series, books, or comics, it doesn't count. A movie needs to provide all the necessary bits of information to help have the story make sense. We'll cover this topic a bit more later. I will be covering the main topics in this video, but I do have a full breakdown with lots, and I mean lots of notes, with a corresponding timestamp where if you want to take a closer look at that, you can find that whole breakdown available for my Patreon users, link in the description. So get ready, you bunch of Wookiees, Sookies, and Cookies. Grab your lightsaber, your portions, and take a shot every time someone says the Force.
The Force. The Force. The Force. The Force. Maxie bit the Force.
It's gonna be a bumpy ride. Part 1. The Force is bullshit. To start us off, we really need to address the elephant in the room. Remember a time when you first watched the original Star Wars trilogy from the 1970s and early 80s? You learned that there were individuals who were committed to a lifestyle of wearing robes, carrying a flashy glow stick, and talking about the Force. So, what is the Force, you might say? Well, if you searched online, I'm sure you'll find hundreds of resources trying to explain what this is, and then it just seems more complicated. Now, what the Force was, according to the original trilogy, was a spiritual essence. It was like a god in this universe. So that's what the Force represented. It was a spiritual entity, considering how Lucas was creating a group of sci-fi samurai monks. Now, what the Force does is another question. We know it can do the following things based on the original trilogy. It can move objects, it can choke people, control weaker minds of different creatures, and can affect a movie when it's remastered. But, according to the new Star Wars trilogy, the Force can do literally anything that's convenient to the plot. You got a character with a weak development, but you just want them to look cool? We'll use the Force. Now, let's say that your character, the Jedi, have found ways to gain power and do other cool tricks from the Force. Is that a bad thing? Actually, the answer is no, if it's done correctly. In The Force Awakens, the writers decided to add a few more rules and concepts. Number 1. The Force can freeze a bullet mid-air. Number 2, the Force can mind read. These are the established rules, which is already consistent considering how neither of the previous films utilized this. I mean, imagine several other scenarios where freezing a bullet mid-air would have been, you know, kind of helpful. Now, assuming that the Jedi and the Sith learned some new skills from the Force, which would be nice if we were told that, let's just imagine that was the intent. Okay, so now your main character, Rey, and what's his name again? I keep forgetting. Oh, Kylo. That's it. Got it. So your main characters, or technically Kylo, as Rey actually has not been properly trained, Kylo has these tricks in his arsenal where he goes to deal with his challenges. These are the established rules. This movie chose to include this for an important reason, and not just for the sake to make the movie look cool. So why isn't Kylo using these tricks to his advantage? Does Kylo force choke? Nope. Does Kylo freeze bullets after the opening scene? Nope. Does he read minds after interrogating Poe? Not really. Kylo can't even push or pull objects. Ugh. Part 2. Setup. There's another really big issue that needs to be addressed, as I wouldn't want you to do what the filmmakers decided to do in this movie, which ruined the entire experience. Clearly, the writers decided to skip basic writing techniques when making this movie. And don't just take my word for it, as there have been others who have covered this topic in great detail, and these writers really don't care. One major flaw in this movie is the severe lack of proper setup and payoff. If you don't understand what these are, let me put it in another way. Everything in your movie, from every line, the props, the focus details, the characters, the villains, and everything in between, needs to serve a purpose in your story. Let me say that again. Everything everything in your movie needs to serve a purpose. You create a character, it has to make an important contribution to the overall story. You want us as the audience to focus on an important detail, then there has to be an important reason for it. One of my big philosophies in writing is that if you can remove a single element from the script and the movie will still play out smoothly or even better, then you should really just get rid of it or figure out another way to tell that information. See, setting up is basically giving the audience the necessary information that something might happen. Then your payoff is conclude that thing in which you had set up. It really is a simple concept. You've seen it all over the place. Let's look at an example of how proper setup and expectations can help your movie. No, we're not looking at an anime. We're going back to Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Throughout the movie, Harry is faced with a new enemy, the Dementors, which essentially represents J.K. Rowling's depression. But we're also introduced to a spell which can not only protect you, but deflect the Dementors, which is called a Patronus. Now, notice that in this world, and specifically the story, the Dementors infect their victims with fear and create a dark, sad place. But the Patronus is a white glowing shield created when the user thinks of a happy moment. In other words, happiness beats sadness, which is a really neat way to integrate a concept into your story. But the main point I want to talk about is this. Notice when, where, and how the spell is introduced. First, we catch a glimpse when Lupin uses it against Dementors near the start of the film. Then, as the threat of the Dementors grows, Harry asks Lupin to teach him the spell. We're then told that you must say the magic words and then think of the happiest memory. So Harry tries and then fails. We learn that Harry failed as his happiest memory wasn't happy enough. Harry realizes that his happiness comes from thinking of his family, which also plays an important part in Harry's story. So now when Harry tries the spell, he succeeds, and then Harry uses it a few more times before he realizes that he's as strong as his father and can save himself and his godfather. We're given a glimpse, then we see the protagonist learn the trick and improve. The character will fail along the way, and then during the final climax, then the character finally achieves the impossible. That's how you fix the Force. Look at the number of times this movie either tries to set up something without a payoff or tries to do a payoff without a proper setup. Why is it important to properly set up something? It creates anticipation. It hooks the viewer in as we don't know exactly what's going to happen. It creates tension and we're looking to be relieved. That's where the payoff comes in. We're finally given the answer. We finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, let's say that our hero is given some information which is starting to set up something for later, but they're also informed that if they fail to perform a task correctly, something bad will happen. This is called Part 3, Consequences. Now the word, quote, consequences might sound like a sad and icky word, but it's vital in telling your story. Consequences is letting your character know that if they make a mistake, there will be a punishment. Consequences tell us as the viewer that there's a lot more at stake, that our hero can't just waltz through the story like everything's sunshine and rainbows, that there's some weight to their actions and decisions that have to be made. Sometimes they may only have one chance to get something right or all is lost. There is a limit to what the character can do, which forces them to make very careful decisions in order to achieve their goal. As an audience, we need to know
what a man can do and what a man can't do,
as it helps us relate to them. An excellent example of this is in the movie Creed, as we're given a scene near the start where Adonis goes into a gym thinking that he's the strongest fighter, so much so that he gambles his own car. Adonis fights a beginner and defeats them with ease, but then he's faced with a professional fighter, he defeats him, and then is taught a painful lesson. So throughout the movie, when we watch Creed train to be the best fighter he can, we're rooting for him. We know Adonis is vulnerable, he's got flaws, and there's a possibility that he might fail. Even in the final match, while Adonis is making great strides, he's also getting beaten up left, right, and to the point where he can barely see and almost lands a concussion. The tension is slowly rising as there might be a possibility that our hero might lose, because we know if he does, everything he's worked up for will be for nothing. Finally, with the last bit of his energy, he knocks his opponent on the ground. By knowing what's at stake, we feel more drawn to the character and are rooting for them to win. How do we understand consequences? Some of the best ways is by having your character make a literal mistake and witness the weight of their actions. I love how in Zootopia, Hopkins thinks that she solved the mystery of the predator animals going insane, but in doing so, she ruins her relationship with her friend and ends up creating a stigma that predators are actually evil. So she needs to try again, but be more thorough and try harder in order to find the true reason and the culprit behind the mystery. Consequences are important. Now, two problems happen in this movie when we talk about consequences. First, to address the filmmakers themselves who decided to mess around with an existing franchise that's already been adored by fans for decades and basically decided to kill off Han Solo in the first movie, then Luke Skywalker in the second movie, and then Leia in the third, which I know is because the actress died, but you've now completely hurt the relationship that existing fans had towards this franchise to dishonor the ones truly dedicated to these stories. And for what? Shock value? Oh no, Han is dead. I know we're talking about story, but it's also important to think about in real life consequences when you, as a filmmaker, have the audacity to take advantage of your fans by promising things in your story and then destroy it right in front of their eyes. This is a great way to essentially piss off a loyal fan base. So, if you don't want to annoy the fans, don't promise them something and then ruin it. That's bad. Don't do it. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, making sure that we as the audience, as well as your characters, understand that their actions can have consequences adds more weight to their decision, showing that what they're doing isn't easy, which makes us want to root for our hero to win in the end. Because after all the difficult decisions and mistakes they've made along the way, they deserve it. Part 4. Rey is a terrible character. Finally, the last thing we absolutely need to mention is the main character, Rey. Now, just to be clear, I am not attacking the actress Daisy Ridley, and I've never blamed the actors for their performance. Rey stands from a much deeper problem. It was very clear from the filmmakers, and by filmmakers I mean the writer, producers, directors, studio executives, and anyone else in charge who had a say on her character. They didn't want to create a character, or a movie for that matter, that was meant for the fans of Star Wars, or at least not the fans who grew up with Star Wars. The filmmakers made this movie for a single agenda, and that was to present a personal message and to tell you that you should accept it. That personal message being that we're going to have a female character who's stronger than the men, who's smarter than the men, and can literally do anything better than the men. And just to be the 1,000,000th person to say this, audiences don't care what gender, race, species, or sexuality your main character is, as long as they're written well. When a character is written well, then they will have a clear outward and inward goal that they're striving towards, which motivates them to keep trucking on. There's flaws and obstacles that the character needs to work hard in order to overcome them, which makes us want to root for them. They should have a unique personality with quirks so that we can easily identify them. When you complain about the lack of so-called strong female characters, whatever that means, then you probably don't watch many movies or shows, as there's plenty. Look in the West, we have Mulan from Mulan, we have Ripley from Aliens, Arya Stark, Sansa Stark, and even Daenerys from Game of Thrones, if Season 8 never existed. Elastic Girl from Incredibles, Belle from Beauty and the Beast, Sarah Connor from the Terminator franchise, Princess Leia, who has already existed in the Star Wars franchise, Clarice Starling from Silence of the Lambs.
Do you want me to go on?
No, I think you've covered it. I might as well. I'm almost at the bottom of the list.
And if we head over to the Eastern Hemisphere, we have Mikasa Ackerman from Attack on Titan, Yuri Nakamura from Angel Beats, Tsukasa Yusaki from Tonikawa, Violet Evergarden from Violet Evergarden, Raftalia from Shield Hero, Nezuko from Demon Slayer, literally the entire cast of Magica Modica, Miku Nakano from Quintessential Quintuplets, and I mean, that confession scene was pretty badass, Yuzu Hiragi from Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V, or at least in the first 30 episodes or so. Now, you might have noticed something that all these characters I mentioned have in common, which is that their journey started in a place where they were vulnerable, and through hard work and playing it smartly, made them rise to the top, which made us not only want to cheer them on as we wanted them to succeed, but we could believe in their journey, watching them face different challenges and how they defeated them. So Rey doesn't have any challenges. Like real challenges, as in challenges that push her limits to become a better person. Rey already knows how to pilot the Falcon and how to fix it, somehow. Rey knows how to use a lightsaber, how to fight, how to beat someone with intense formal training, not from one, but 2 masters, and do it all without even holding a lightsaber even once in her entire existence. But James, the Force, shut up. Here's the point. Rey doesn't have flaws, which makes her unrelatable. The Force doesn't or shouldn't solve all your problems. Finally, I usually like to leave these videos on a positive note, so Part 5, the good. Now that you've listened to me complain about all the problems in this movie, you might be wondering one thing. Was there anything that was actually good in this absolute monstrosity, this purely over-glorified dumpster fire, and possibly one of the worst major blockbuster films in the past 20 years? Well, I mean, the cinematography is pretty dope at times. Like, here's a nice shot, and oh, that's another nice shot. This shot looks actually pretty cool. And, well, that's it, really. Thanks everyone for watching my very long explanation. Of course, if you're a fan of the movie and of Star Wars, that's absolutely fine as always, but was there anything that you may have agreed or disagreed with? If so, let me know down in the comments section. Remember that I will be posting my full breakdown, but will only be available to my Patreons, along with exclusive access to other content and resources. The link is in the description. And finally, please like the video if it brought you any value, and subscribe, as this video was painful to make and made me lose brain cells. Have a great week, and I will see you next time.